Hey everybody, I'm CJ, and just take a look at this. I mean, wow. The Twitter lynch mob is on the move. They have a new target, and their target is Chris Pratt. Basically, it all started with a pretty innocuous. Well, actually, I don't know how innocuous this tweet was ever really meant to be, but basically, it's a started with the Battle of the Chris's. And I don't completely understand, aside from the first name, I don't really understand what is meant to connect all these different actors named Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pratt, Chris Pine, and Chris Evans. Aside from the fact, like I say, they've all got the same first name. Three of those are involved with the MCU. Chris Pine is not, at least as far as I know. So, what the fuck? But basically, uh, I guess the psycho contingent of Twitter saw this tweet, which of these Chris's has to go, and they settled on Chris Pratt because, well, basically, there's a very high probability that Chris Pratt voted Republican in the last election, and in Hollywood, that is a serious no no. Now, the rule of thumb seems to be that if there's a celebrity in Hollywood and they tend not to make a whole lot of political statements, you don't hear them talking about political whatchamacallit or endorsing this, that, or the other candidate, that's usually the tip off that that actor or that movie director or just whoever, that person is very probably a Republican. And in the case of Chris Pratt, there's a very good chance he's been maybe a little too vocal in the religious opinions that he has or some of the other opinions that he has. It makes it a pretty straight line that if he checks the boxes over here, the odds of him being a Republican and in particular a Trump voter, the likelihood is actually pretty high. And so as a result, a guy who said nothing to anybody, did nothing to anybody, as far as I know, he's one of the nicest people you could ever hope to meet. I mean, it's not like I've ever met the guy or anything, but I mean, I guess as far as people in Hollywood are concerned, he's maybe the best way to put it is he's less of an asshole than most other people in Hollywood. He's getting canceled for, as best I can tell, absolutely no reason, which by itself, that's bad enough. But some of the things that people are saying about this guy, uh, far right religious maggot, let's see. Actually, I'm looking at this now and I'm not sure that he's. Yeah, there was one tweet that actually called him an outright white supremacist. All right, the guy has expressed normie religious opinions. He's expressed basically no political opinions, at least as far as I know. The closest he's gotten to being political in any way whatsoever is basically supporting the troops, which I mean, realistically, that shouldn't be a political statement, but let's face it, it still kind of is. I mean, I remember the sense that I get is that supporting the troops in this day and age, it's not the big deal that it used to be back when the global war on terror and the George Bush administration and stuff like that, when those were more of a thing. Supporting the troops was basically tantamount to endorsing George W. Bush. Less so these days, I gather, but I guess it's still kind of a political statement. I mean, it's weird because President Trump has actually done a lot to scale back American military adventures overseas, and so supporting the troops in today's environment, like I say, it's less of a it's less of a red flag for being a Republican. Now, apparently, that is not enough to stop the guy's Twitter lynch mob from coming after him, but I don't know. It's like I say, I've never met Chris Pratt. I don't know him. Frankly, I couldn't even tell you anything about the guy. He's been in some Marvel movies. Like that's just about and Jurassic World, and that's really just about all I really know about him. My sense of it though is that there Chris Pratt and I would probably have quite a few policy disagreements with one another, whether the guy's a Republican or not. I honestly don't know and honestly don't care. I still get the idea he and I would have some policy disagreements, but whatever. I mean, the fact that he and I don't necessarily agree on politics or whatever else doesn't really mean that the guy needs to have an entire Twitter lynch mob drop the hammer on the guy. The other thing about this that's sort of, I don't know, interesting, at least to me, is the fact that I've been suspicious of Chris Hemsworth for quite a while now because here again, you've got somebody who really doesn't make a whole lot of political statements, at least that I've seen. The statements I've seen him make that might be a little controversial, they typically revolve around his refusal to subscribe to the Hollywood cult mentality. He is very open about the fact that he moved out of LA. He's got his own place in Australia, and that's where he lives. That's where he works out of when he can. And he tries to spend as little time in Los Angeles as possible. And so it's made me wonder more than once. Chris Hemsworth isn't on anybody's shit list today, but it's like, how long is that really going to last? It makes me think that there's a very good chance that sooner or later they're going to come for Chris Hemsworth too. And I don't know. I mean, obviously that doesn't seem like it's going to be today, but don't be surprised if it happens sooner or later. So anyway, but all in all, like I said, Chris Pratt, he just seems like a good guy, and he's getting dragged for best I can tell. Absolutely no reason. And the part that's sickest of all is that the people who are doing the dragging probably feel morally justified. That's sick. But anyway, I'm CJ, and that's that. Please comment, like, subscribe, and share. Doing those things really helps me out. Also, I'm on Twitter at Cole Loves Comics.